When you challenge your assumptions and you try something new, you rewrite your brain, and it is a neurophysiological rewrite that could change the rest of your life. When teams are aligned and they're working that way and they feel like there's the ability for them to be psychologically safe and take risks, right, and connect with one another, their brain waves and their heartbeats actually start to synchronize. That synchrony in a group of people, even strangers, can predict their friendships or their ways of working, like how they're going to work together as a team later on. When you're trying to change someone's mind, you're taking a stick and you're going to the mud in the Grand Canyon, you're trying to create a new little river next to the Grand Canyon. You're trying to get it to go in a new direction.
If somebody was trying to become a transformational leader instead of just being a bossy person in charge, how would they practically do it? What actually makes a great leader? Is it charisma, confidence, skill, or perhaps something different in the brain? And why do some teams feel electric, like everybody's in sync, while others feel like they're draining your soul? Can culture change your biology? Can the workforce literally rewire your brain? And what does neuroscience have to do with the companies that we're going to work for in the future? Hello, I'm Avnish, and this is The Early Perspective. Each episode, we explore how the brain works and what that means for how we learn, think, and live. Today, we're going to talk about how the brain shapes leadership, teamwork, and transformation, and why understanding that now can help change how you study, work, and lead in the future. To help us break all of this down, we have Dr. Ryan McCreedy here with us. He is leading culture transformation for the Americas at Slalom Consulting, serving as a leader for the global workforce modernization and HR transformation practice. He's an engineer turned organizational psychologist, and he has partnered with Fortune 50 clients to lead large transformation and talent strategy projects. He's a scholar practitioner conducting active research on neuroscience and the future of work while also instructing graduate level courses at Harvard University. His specialty is tying psychodynamics and neuroscience together in order to improve leaders, teams, and the entire organizational culture. Dr. McCreedy, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, of course. Before we get into the science, I just wanted to start with you because your path is very unique. You did engineering, business, neuroscience, psychology. So how'd you personally end up at this intersection of neuroscience and leadership? Was there a moment where you realized, this is really what I want to dedicate my life towards?
That's a really good question. I think when I first realized it was, believe it or not, getting my management degree. It was a late night. I was with some friends here in Cambridge, and an executive of an engineering firm had been working with me, had been in school with me for 2 years, and he pulled me aside and he said, "You have never once told me or talked to me about engineering at all. You always talk about people and brains and psychology, and like that's your passion area. So why would you want to continue in this career with engineering?" And at the time, I had the opportunity to become a potential like owner of an engineering firm. Why would you want to do that when that's not what wakes you up in the morning? Now, kind of the thing that's funny is literally a week later, he offered me a position at his engineering firm. But I remember that moment kind of being sobering and realizing, wow, like I had committed to so much in high school and so much in college and getting a degree. I had my professional license, etc. I kind of followed so far down this path, but that moment made me realize that what woke me up in the morning was really helping people live a life well lived through rethinking our workforce and our workspaces. And ever since that day, I committed to making the change. And my engineering brain thought about psychology and thought about work and how we think about organizations. And what more to apply that engineering brain to than neuroscience, because it still is pretty, intense, and it still requires some of that same analytical thinking. And so that's kind of how I got on that journey. It's easier said than done, but that was the moment that I think really kind of defined that.
Yeah, I think that's a wonderful story. So, since you're really now at this intersection, what surprised you most about how the brain shows up at work?
Uh, I don't know about surprising, but what I'd say is most astounding is how often we talk about the brain differently when we're at home or when we're in a clinical setting versus when we talk about the brain in management and business schools. So we pretend like they're different brains. Your brain is the same brain no matter where you're sitting and what you're doing. It's the same brain. Your identity is largely the same identity. You might be masking and trying to be something different, but the core of who you are is going to be the same regardless. And so one of the things that shocks me is how often um, I enter into an organization and I realize that they haven't given the same things they'd hope to provide their kids, their families, their best friends, their loved ones, the same sort of care and space in terms of a good psychological environment. They forget that as soon as they walk through, the revolving door and get into their offices at times. And so we pretend like they're different things, but I think it's the largest opportunity for us to kind of blend a little bit more around what we talk about wellness and clinical psychology and blend that into what results into business outcomes because they're not at odds. Actually, they're very much so congruent and complementary.
Yeah, for sure. I think you can even see neuroscience at any field and any level because the brain is really
Absolutely.
just intertwined with everything. Yeah.
Yeah, there's so much neuroscience in art right now too. Actually,
Yeah, exactly.
like doing neuroscience with like people watching art and being a part of it. It's like incredible.
Yeah, it's everywhere. I think your work and your background make you just perfect to help us lay the foundation for this topic and just really break down what transformational leadership is. So, that term really seems quite complicated. Transformational leadership seems abstract. Could you help break that down and tell us how that's even connected to the brain and what it even is?
Yeah. So transformational leadership traditionally has a few different components, including things like being charismatic, um, having individualized consideration for people, etc. But at the end of the day, what a transformational leader does is allows an organization, a team, or an individual to kind of rethink who they are and how they fit into something that's changing or into a future state. So a transformational leader is not afraid of challenging assumptions and questioning old paradigms and saying what got us here won't get us into the future. And they're willing to lead people in a very intimate way to get them there. Um, how that relates to neuroscience is that what I often like to say is that a neural network, so like when you have a thought or you have a very repetitive thought or behavior, um, those neurons are creating a connection over time that gets embedded deeper and deeper and deeper. So I think of the Grand Canyon, right? The Grand Canyon is a river basically that's been continuously, whittling down and getting deeper, deeper, deeper. It's really well ingrained. And when you're trying to change someone's mind, you're taking a stick and you're going to the mud in the Grand Canyon. You're trying to create a new little river next to the Grand Canyon. You're trying to get it to go in a new direction. A stick against the Grand Canyon is kind of insane because it's very difficult to shift all of the Grand Canyon using that, but you got to start somewhere. So that's kind of the same thing you think about with transformational leadership is that you are in many ways trying to change people's minds and redirect people in a new way. And that requires you shifting their Grand Canyon. So how are you going to have them have new aha moments and unlock new things where they can challenge the way things have been, that stream, the way it's flown all the time, and have these subtle mindset shifts that actually result into lasting new neural pathways, which I think is really powerful. Because when you change your mind or you have a mindset shift, you literally are actually creating a new neural pathway in your brain. And if it doesn't get reinforced, you don't continue to add water to it over time, um, it won't stay. It'll just go back to the big old Grand Canyon, right? So I think that's kind of transformational leadership in a way is you're allowing people to question identities, question assumptions, and then get more comfortable with asking questions and getting curious and being okay with not having answers so that they can realize what that future state actually is.
So, I think that example is first a really good way to help visualize what that even means. But if somebody was trying to become a transformational leader instead of just being a bossy person in charge, how would they practically do it?
That's the harder question. That's for sure. So I think a lot of leaders will try to read books about this stuff, hope that they're going to be able to just be able to become it, right? And what they forget is to look at themselves first, right? So I love when airlines say, when they drop the air masks and they're talking about it and they're saying, make sure you put it on yourself before helping others. A lot of people are eager to help others before they've really helped do the work themselves. And so one of the things that I like to do with folks when I do like executive coaching or leadership development work is trying to get them to identify what are the assumptions they make about the world, what are the assumptions they make about themselves, challenge those assumptions, and then test, like do iterative tests, little labs, so like treat yourself as a lab to help figure out new ways of thinking. So an example of that might be that maybe you're a people pleaser, right? So if you have trouble saying no to people because you're afraid that that will result in a negative consequence, you can try once a week saying no to something. It could be the smallest thing, but you could try once a week saying no to something. And that's your stick next to the Grand Canyon, right? You're starting to redirect water and you're starting to prove if I say no, there's actually not a negative consequence. So you're gathering evidence and you're literally just doing like a little laboratory experiment on yourself. And you're shifting that mindset from saying, ooh, if I say no, I'll get in trouble and nobody will want to believe in me or support me, to actually, that's not true. That doesn't serve me anymore. Okay, I don't need to do that anymore. And once you see that in yourself, you can start to understand how you can apply that to others and coach others. So a transformational leader looks at Avanish and says, hey, here's your unique skills, here's your unique capabilities, but also here's your unique things that I think might be holding you back that you don't want to hold you back, and help you challenge your mindset so that you can become the person that you want to be and have the potential that you're capable of. Does that make sense?
Right. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. I think it's a really good way to explain it, especially taking those small steps and then using that to just compound outwards and becoming real habits. I think that's a great outlook to it, especially great advice for somebody who's trying to change their habits. So then let's now really just get into leadership in general and teams. So, of course, there's good and bad teams, and that really just leadership determines how a team will function. I think I saw a really bad team a couple years ago when I went to the science expo, and the team was incredibly chaotic because there's a student who was in charge and he was just doing his own part, not caring about what everybody else was doing. And then all I saw was the team members running around frantically trying to piece together their project. So let's look at the opposite of this. If you're looking at a high performing team, which is not chaotic and just well organized, what does that even look like in the brain? How does a high performing team look like if you actually look at their brains or the neuroscience behind that?
Yeah, so let's define it real quick. There are three key things to what an effective high performing team are. And the first one is that they are able to do a good product, like they're creating the value or service that they're providing is effective. So think of a sports team, they're making goals. Okay, but that's only 1/3 of a high performing team. So just making the goals isn't great. The second part is around those team members working interdependently to get to that goal. So I love the example that you just shared, because one person going rogue over there isn't really helping the team interdependently work towards a common goal. And then the third thing is, do team members actually benefit or feel like they have wellness or connection or some sort of development as a process of being on the team? So the team needs to perform the thing that they're supposed to be performing, do the task they're supposed to do. They have to do work interdependently to achieve that task. And each member is better for being a part of the team because they're growing and they feel like they belong and are connected to that interdependence, that relationship. So what that looks like inside the brain, and something that I've done research on that I'm really passionate about, is when teams are aligned and they're working that way and they feel like there's the ability for them to be psychologically safe and take risks, right, and connect with one another, their brain waves and their heartbeats actually start to synchronize. So you actually start to see literally the same ups and downs of the brain at the same time across a few different bands. And you start to see their hearts, not the heart rate specifically synchronize, but you see the movement of their heart often synchronize. So you'll see them flow together or flow against each other when they're not in alignment. And what's really cool about this is that it's highly related to your nervous system, and it's highly related to the release of a hormone called oxytocin. And oxytocin is the same hormone that mothers release when they're breastfeeding or when they're inducing pregnancy. And that kind of mother-child connection is related to that. But it's also what happens when you and I have eye contact or we give each other a big hug. That same kind of hormone is released. It's a connection hormone. Some people call it the love hormone, but it's really like a connection hormone. And what it results in is pro-social behavior. And so when you have this release of oxytocin and you have this connection within people's brains and hearts where they're moving together, you start to see people more willing to take risks together and trust each other. It's almost the neurological foundations of trust, really. And so you see people start to collaborate and cooperate in a way they may not before. And it's not groupthink. I think a lot of people think that the synchrony thing is everybody's thinking the same way. There could be very diverse people with diverse thoughts that get in sync. They're able to then talk about those differences in a new way. They're able to actually talk through them, name the elephant in the room, and be able to move past their challenges together. And I think that that's extremely powerful. And what's even crazier about it, if I may, is that they've done multiple studies, and my study as well has done this, where that synchrony in a group of people, even strangers, can predict their friendships or their ways of working, like how they're going to work together as a team later on. A group of freshmen at a college, Dartmouth College, were all given a bunch of videos to watch in an fMRI machine on orientation day, essentially. And the level of synchrony between people that didn't even know each other on freshman orientation day predicted their friendships like 1-2 years out in college. So this is almost like the precursors, like this subconscious kind of precursor that's happening in our nervous systems that really influence how we connect with people and how we work and collaborate with people.
Yeah, I think that's actually amazing that there's synchrony amongst things like their brain waves, their heartbeat. That's wonderful. So then I think your third point almost ties into culture in a work environment, how people belong and fit in. So how does culture literally change somebody's brain? Like other examples could be stress, burnout, etc.
Yeah, well, I think stress and burnout are negative aspects that can change someone's brain, right? When we think about stress, when we think about burnout, we think about how people are in fight, flight, and actually there's also fawn and freeze. So basically, they're in one of these modes of being attacked, and it's going to be reactive. But their logical centers are offline to them mostly, and they're acting in a very survivalistic way. The opposite side of that, and there's the sympathetic and parasympathetic nervous systems that are actually operating. So the sympathetic nervous system is that fight or flight, but then your parasympathetic is going to be your rest and digest. I don't know if you've ever heard of rest and digest, but
Yeah,
that's the
yeah, I have.
opposite of fight or flight. And so what I think is interesting is how can we create organizational systems or cultures that make more people feel comfortable around rest and digest, or eustress, which is a positive form of stress, like a stress that's motivating. Like, yeah, it's really hard to win that basketball game, but you're going to try because it's kind of fun and engaging. And what's interesting is that think about when you're on a roller coaster. This could backfire on me very quickly. When you're on a roller coaster and you hear that like click, 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 and you're up at the very top, what does that feel like to you? Are your palms sweaty? Is
It's
your heart
exciting.
racing
You
a
can
little
feel that
bit?
pit, yeah, the heart rate, and then you can
The
feel
pit
that
in your
pit in your
stomach,
stomach.
right?
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. So there's two people on this planet. They either appraise that as anxiety and they're anxious, they're going to die, they're freaked out, or it's exciting, right? And I'm sure you've talked about anxiety reappraisal before, maybe within this podcast, but you can help people reappraise or still have these engaging physiological experiences. But the way that you shift culture is through shifting the mindset of what the narrative attaches to that. So if you're seeing an organizational change as something scary and something that you want to be anxious about, and you have that negative response, well, that's a challenge that the organization can say, no, this is an opportunity. This is something to be excited about and help people be a part of the vision of what that future is. And then they get more excited and more engaged. And so it's not physiological per se, but you can influence the physiology by thinking about how you message things, how you communicate things, how you prepare people. And one of my favorite things is co-creating with people. So oftentimes leaders will think that they have to have the answer. That's not true. In fact, usually you don't have the best answer because the people doing the work are the ones that are closest to how things are actually connected and how things actually work. So by bringing those people into the opportunity and having them co-create in how to move forward using design thinking and saying, how might we? People engage and reappraise that anxiety as an opportunity and something to get excited about. And so that's kind of how you can shift a culture in a way, is moving from a hierarchical, top down, command and control, stress people out kind of mentality to leaders need to get comfortable with not having answers, and leaders need to be comfortable with giving work back to the people and helping with the people to solve the problems. And that can actually help people's nervous systems.
So let's just zoom out for a second. I know that you work with companies designing the future of workspaces. So then, what do you think the future of a workspace will be in like 10 to 20 years? How do you think that would look
Um, I,
like?
yeah, no, it's a good question. So when we do future of work stuff, it's very easy to think of like the flying cars of organizations, right? So people would think like, oh, we're gonna have completely autonomous robots working and everything's gonna be agentized and we're all gonna be out of jobs. I don't believe that. I don't believe that at all. It's gonna be swift, but it will be incremental. And so really what the future of work I'm hopeful for um, is that people will have a lot more of their jobs that are mundane or repetitive tasks. They will have those things automated. And in the real future of work, it'll be people working on the collaborative, strategic, really fiercely human things of the future. The things that like we haven't had the time to do, that rainy day list of like, man, I wish we could just. I always say that with clients. I always like, I wish we could just do this. I wish we could just do this. Imagine your whole job being all those fun things you wish you could do, but you're doing all the chores right now. And so you can't have the fun stuff. I think the future of work will really belong to people that are creative and critical thinkers. People that are more routine task based are going to have a hard time because those routine tasks can be learned and can be automated often. So you need critical thinkers that are okay with navigating ambiguity, connecting disparate dots, and creating new information. Because the things that AI do that people are concerned about with the future of work, all AI does is regurgitate socialized information as truth, basically. It connects dots that other people have already connected for the most part. It doesn't think, it's not thinking. We still need to think. So I hope that we have a lot of really good thinkers. And actually, in order for us to get there with our future of work, we have to rethink how we do things like school, right? In high school, are we having people take standardized tests and scantrons where they're repeating information back? Or are we having them answer really challenging questions where we can get them into the nuance of how things are a little bit more of a gradient rather than a binary and that kind of thing? And so are we inspiring more critical thinking as something critical for the future of work? But I think it could be good. I also think it can offer us to do a little bit less time in our workspace and work, right? Like, can we get back to living a little bit more? I don't know if that'll work in American society, but I do think we have an unprecedented opportunity of doing more in less time, which will allow us to get back to being humans for a little bit.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, I just wanted to do a little rapid fire round before we wrap up. So I'm just gonna name three things. I just want you to try to come up with a single answer for each of them. Okay? If somebody's curious and wants to start learning on their own, what's one book you could suggest to them?
Leader's Brain by Dr. Michael Platt.
What's one experiment that they could read about?
Ooh, one experiment. The Aish conformity experiments. ACHE. But yeah, the conformity experiments.
And then what's the most important idea they should take away from this discussion?
When you challenge your assumptions and you try something new, you rewrite your brain and it is a neurophysiological rewrite that could change the rest of your life. So go try something different today.
And then what's one belief that you would wish every student would unlearn about teamwork or leadership?
That you need to be the most competent. You need to be the best. Um, remove the I. It's the no I in team kind of thing, but get real comfortable with assuming everybody else in the room is just as terrified to work together as you.
Okay, yeah, Dr. McCreedy, thank you so much for being here today. I think we're leaving this conversation with a new lens on how we show up in the world, not just as future employees, but as humans, really. For everybody listening, if today made you think differently about leadership, culture, or even the brain, share this episode with somebody who you think needs it. And remember, the brain is not just inside your head. It's in your teams, your environments, and your relationships. If you guys enjoyed this episode and learned something new, make sure to follow on your favorite podcasting platform or on YouTube. I'm Avnish, this is The Early Perspective, and I'll see you in the next episode.